This talk is part of the Cape Cod Maritime Museum's History on Tap evening speaker series. Enjoy, and we hope to see you in the museum soon.
That connected us to history, and specifically all of this history. I am going to go through a little bit of it, and I'm also going to tell you my favorite quote about history. A past lacking tangible relics seems too tenuous to be credible. To be certain there was a past, we must see at least some of its traces. That's from David Lowenthal. The name of the book is The Past is a Foreign Country. And that feels very true to me. And even above and beyond that, having a tangible experience is even better, I think, than that tangible relic itself. All right. So moving right along. Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving right along. The Schooner Hindu was designed and built by William Hand Jr. in 1925. It was featured in Motor Yacht Magazine and in Rudder Magazine, the striking double-ender. William Hand Jr. was a very prolific yacht designer. He designed minesweepers for World War I, as well as the Bowdoin, that double-hulled Arctic exploration schooner. He was said to have made exceptionally handsome boats and very sea-kindly boats. He was the drafter for John Alden, so you'll recognize some familiar shapes with John Alden's boats. These are his notes about what was originally called the Princess Pat. That's his beautiful handwriting from the MIT Nautical Museum, the Hart Museum. It was built at the Hodgson Brothers Boatyard up in Maine, and that's one of the longest family-run boatyards in the country. This is the article from, I've got like 101 slides, so if I'm going too fast or you want me to back up, please let me know. This article about the Princess Pat, the seagoing auxiliary, is pretty fascinating, from the 1927 Motor Yacht Magazine. It outlines, I'm going to read some of it to you. Notable to me, the appeal of the auxiliary sailing craft is a powerful one to many yachtsmen. A recent boat which should bring joy to the heart of all deep-sea sailors is the schooner Princess Pat, built for J. Goodwin Hall of New York by Hodgson Brothers of East Boothbay, Maine, from designs by William Hand Jr. of New Bedford, who has had, of recent years, that's not right, anyway, made a special study of this type of craft. Unfortunately, the illustrations of the boat under sail do not show much action, as there was very little wind of a particular time they were made. Also, due to difficulties in placing a camera, very boaty, it was not possible to photograph a very excellent stateroom between the forward and after cabins. The boat, after her launching in August, was commissioned and extensive cruises were taken in her. She was found to be entirely satisfactory, perfectly seaworthy and comfortable under all conditions. There is installed in her a Model M4 Speedway engine, which turns over at about 700 revolutions. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Great. And drives her at 8 1/4 knots. This is very good for a boat of this size, as she is 61 feet 3 inches long and 15 feet 2 inches abeam, and nearly 8 feet in draft. Her sail plan provides for a modern and handy rig with 1,713 square feet in the lowers. The long pole mainmast carries a topsail of 143 square feet. The deck trim is entirely of teak, and the finish below is white mahogany. The arrangement below decks is complete and practical and provides for 2 men in the forecastle. The galley is next aft and extends the full width of the vessel. The main saloon becomes the fore and mainmast and is fitted with extension transoms and built-in berths. A stateroom with 1 double berth comes next, and abaft of this is a cabin. Princess Pat can accommodate 10, including the crew. She carries a power tender and is equipped with a home light electric plant for lighting purposes. While Princess Pat is essentially a roomy, seagoing cruiser, she has clean lines and is fast on all points of sailing. And all of that, blah, blah. But anyway, she was an RV at sea for a very wealthy family in the 1920s. Best way to describe her. Ability to go to sea and stay there is conspicuous tendency in many recent craft. There's her interior. So this boat is a little portal into different pieces of history, which was on that 100-year diagram. This is the Princess Pat, who was a very eligible English princess. Her dad was commissioned in Canada, and she went with him, eventually falling in love with a commoner, which was very disappointing to her family. And she married him, losing her royal title. They gave her the honor of making the flag for their light infantry, which is called a rick-a-dam-doo. Apparently that's Gaelic for the cloth of your mother. And did anybody here go to Girl Scouts ever? You know the song. There's a song. The first time I heard it was when the entire Johnson & Johnson family came out for a sail, which was in my first season of the Schooner Hindu in Provincetown. I did not go to Girl Scouts. I did not know a lot of the history of the boat yet, and they all, 30 of them, broke into this song and dance, and I was mortified. So anyway, there she is. That was her wedding. So the Hindu changed hands quite a few times. She went from the Princess Pat to the Je ne sais pas, to the Sais pas, to the Anna Lee Ames, owned by the Ames family for a little while. In the 1920s, good segue to your Roaring Twenties talk next. It was very cute to have your own schooner. William Parker went to India to trade spices after the Great Depression. Thought it wasn't great to have a private yacht and needed to do some trade. That was the name that stuck. And I don't know actually a ton about that voyage to India. I don't have log from it. I would love to know more. If anybody is a researcher, please dig in. We'll get to the other bits there afterwards. Several months to get to India, apparently, in that time, 20 to 25 days. And again, I don't know who was crew. I don't know what they brought back, but apparently someone did find log in the Boston shipping log about Hindu coming in with spices. She also took part in the Newport to Bermuda race in 1930. Didn't do particularly well. I'm going to blame the skipper. Obviously a great boat. I don't know what happened. And that race, you guys probably know the history of that. They were scoffed at, thinking that amateur sailors could take these boats out to sea and be safe. They proved them wrong over the course of many years, but they were brutal, brutal races. The next bit of history is the Corsair fleet. So World War II broke out, and there were German U-boats sinking all of the supply ships along the eastern seaboard. And it was the Commodore of the American Cruising Club that was pressing this issue, saying, you should use schooners. They're quiet. They are not detectable by sonar. Please, you got to do it. You got to do it. And eventually the Army Navy gave in and decided they would give it a try. The schooners are, so the Schooner Hindu is right there. She's 61006. So all of these schooners were painted battleship gray. They had machine guns on their bows. They had depth chargers underneath them. And we did just get log from the National Archives in Washington, D.C. that shows the Schooner Hindu, where she was stationed, who the officers were that were on board. What was also interesting to me is that that is the last time. First of all, everybody who was out there was undraftable. So you can imagine out on the high seas in January, a bunch of guys who were not physically fit to go to war, but were out on this sailboat in freezing conditions. That was the last time that sailors were actually used in a war effort in American history. So this Disney was involved in the proliferation and whatnot of the Corsair fleet. We've got these stickers we made. But and they did a lot of propaganda. So this machine gun with this ridiculous polar suit, I don't think was standard issue for the sailors out there, but it's certainly a striking image. Probably that like J. Crew version of cuteness was not standard issue either. Very, very James Bond. The Hindu after World War II went to Provincetown. It was purchased by Al Avalar, who was one of the officers in the Corsair fleet. He first wanted the Ticonderoga, then it was a little too big, and he fell in love with the Schooner Hindu and brought her to his hometown. Because she had been in World War II, she had watertight bulkheads installed and bunks for lots of sailors. She really easily transitioned into being a charter boat, and as far as I know, is one of the longest running charter boats on the East Coast. Again, pictures from Provincetown. Not a lot has changed. That building is still there. She was in the first blessing of the fleet in Provincetown. I think this will be the 80th one next season, and it will be Hindu's 81st season in Provincetown. So she is a Grand Banks, she's a half-scale Grand Banks fishing vessel. She's one of the only, or the actually only remaining representation of the schooners that once lined the wharves in Provincetown. There were 50 wharves back then. There's one now. And she's the only link to that past that's there, aside from the Rose Dorothea. Have any of you gone to the library in Provincetown and seen that? It's up on the second story, which is very cool. Just you don't get to go sailing on her, unfortunately. Yeah, more pictures of Provincetown. Sails up at the dock. I don't know. Yeah, clearly. And then, so Al Avalar is responsible for starting the whale watch industry. He was the original owner who brought Hindu to Provincetown. And he noticed when he took people sailing that if a whale showed up, everybody got super excited about it. And when there was one in the bay, he would put it on the chalkboard and those trips would sell out. So that was his inspiration for later getting these dolphin boats. So that's the first one there, parked next to Hindu. We're now up to Dolphin 11. This is one of her, I think it was $2 per person, $4 to go sailing on the Hindu at this particular time. Tickets, this was somebody's honeymoon up at the top there. They went on their honeymoon on the Hindu. Moving ahead in time, color film. So Al Avalar was a spokesperson for Lipton tea. I'd sooner Lipton. It has more tea taste. Apparently sailors were very into Lipton tea. We did just go to sail Boston with the Hindu and our other vessel, the Bloodhound, and we made these T-shirts with the two boats and a bunch of Lipton tea bags in the water. 1960s. So she was a Marconi rig. She was a gaff rig when she was built, transitioned to a Marconi rig, and then they painted her hull different colors every year. There was a series of postcards of the Hindu with a different color for each year. Again, Al Avalar. And I'm just going to keep going because, again, I have like 101 slides for you. People having fun. I've heard that these lawn chairs that people are sitting on were not the most fun when the boat started to heel. You'd have to on for dear life. So Captain Foggy was the person who owned the boat before my husband and I, and he Does anybody know Captain Foggy? No, you do. All right. He's passionate about the boat, and unfortunately got into a partnership that didn't work out so well. He had hired my husband, Josh Rowan, to be a captain for him in Key West, Florida. So Josh got introduced to the boat there. And then Foggy lost the boat to the bank, and it was just sitting at the dock in Stock Island sinking. And my husband and his father, being sentimental and mechanically minded, decided to save the boat, which made sense for them. Bill Rowan, my husband's father, built a sloop in the mountains of Oregon over the course of 12 years, named his oldest son Noah as a joke, and took his family sailing through South and Central America for 7 years while my husband was growing up. So he was entrenched in wooden boats from the time he was tiny. This is what she looked like when, so Kevin was one of the first ones to try and save her. This we refer to her as the phoenix that keeps rising from the ashes. It's a hard thing for a boat of that size to be 100 years old and to have had enough people around who have kept her going. She's been super, super lucky. What a woof. What a project. So, yeah, a little bit about Josh. This is the boat that his father built and took them sailing on. Josh was the youngest ever skipper to get his license. He was 15. His mom had to write a letter to the Coast Guard on his behalf, but it worked. I think she said something along the lines of, "I trust my son at the helm more than my husband." So this is Josh diving in. This is obviously a sinking boat with worm damage. And yeah. So that was 2011. He did know at the time that he was going to have to Band-Aid it along for a while, but that eventually there would be a full restoration that needed to happen. I got involved. And I really didn't have sailing experience before, but it's all a grand adventure. It was rough. I mean, you can see the restoration that Foggy did of the boat definitely saved the boat, and he didn't have the funds to make it with quality materials. So certain things were skimped on that led to a 10-year lifespan for some of those materials. So I'm going to back up here a little bit. So in 2020, we had the boat in Annapolis for the winter. COVID broke out. We had to wait for quite a while before we could bring the boat up to Provincetown. So it was July when we were underway. It was myself, my best friend, and her husband, and Josh on board. At 3 o'clock in the morning, we were in the Long Island Sound. There's a little bit of fog. There was a tropical storm coming up the coast behind us, and it suddenly felt like we were on top of something, even though we were in 150 feet of water. That something turned into a scuttled boat. Someone had drilled holes in the hull of their boat and let the dock lines go, knowing that there was this tropical storm and an outgoing tide, but they didn't do a good job. They did not drill any holes in the water tanks or the fuel tanks, and so it was still buoyant in the water column, not to the point where you could see it, but yeah, so it was pretty horrifying. I do always say that I hit the boat perfectly because we hit it right on the stem, and you'll see a little more. I think I put that. So bent the jewelry and took a big gouge out of what was actually newly repurposed. It was a replaced stem there with green heart. So you know how hard green heart is, and it took a huge chunk out of that. So if we had hit it at any other angle, we definitely would have sunk in a matter of minutes. And that became very apparent to me when we were lifting out all of these little pieces of lead from the boat. And each one this big, was over 50 pounds. And just imagining enough water getting on top of that weight, it would go so horribly quickly. Yeah, so we limped the boat to Provincetown, where our friends, the Winklers, used their cranes to haul it to look at the damage. It was determined that it was not going to be a summer to sail with the boat, quite obviously. You can also see the hog in the boat there. So the shear line is supposed to look like a smile, and this one looks like a frown. So yeah, we got up to Maine with a crash pump on board and looked at boat yards that we could do the restoration in. We ultimately determined that we didn't know how extensive it was going to be, and it would be a bad investment to put it at a boat yard. We bought property in Thomaston, Maine instead, knowing that we wouldn't lose the boat if we bought property. And we got started. Luckily, we did choose the location because of the shipwrights. So this is Mike, who had just done a restoration on the schooner Ladona, which is there's only 5 William Hand Jr. schooners that are left sailing. They're the Zodiac, Ladona, Bowden, Hindu, and Lotus. But and the Ladona was also built at Hodgdon Brothers, so very familiar construction techniques with the double hockey sticks futtocks and double framing. Yeah, so we definitely would have had an easier time just building another boat right next door. The amount of time, you're welcome. The ship of Theseus, is it the same boat if every part of the boat has been replaced? The argument is if you keep the boat intact and take it apart piece by piece, put it together piece by piece, you've got the same soul. I'm going with that, and that is what we did. Yeah, so again, first we thought it might just be the bottom third of the frames that needed to be replaced. But looking at the scantlings originally, a lot of these frames were undersized and there was iron thickness all around. This boat went around Hatteras several times like that. So the last time it did, my husband talked about watching it rack like diagonally as the waves hit it, and said that's the last time it's ever going around Hatteras. That had already happened. Simon Larson was one of the lead shipwrights and stayed through the entire project. These are the sketches that we had, which again came from the Hart Nautical Museum at MIT. And they're tiny. He had to blow them up a million times and try to extrapolate the dimensions of the boat. It was complete, but not an easy job. Sail plan. I think this is my husband, and I think this is the moment where he's like, what am I doing? Are we really doing this? Maybe this is not a good idea. So you can see we used those battens to keep the shape. We started building a barn, knowing that it was going to be winter soon. So we built a timber frame barn over the Hindu. Projects on projects. And we did apply for a grant from the town of Provincetown, which was quite a process. The Hindu definitely meets the criteria to be on the National Register of Historic Objects, but because we had already started taking it apart and it was no longer a boat, we couldn't get it onto the National Historic Register, which meant that we couldn't get any national grants for it, which was a bummer. Wish we had known. But anyway, we had to really educate people about the importance and significance of a historic schooner, even though there was a lot of support for it. One of the arguments was, this is a movable object. What's to say that we don't give them the money and then they take it to Key West for the rest of the boat's life, which was very easily fixed by just putting in a clause that if we did that, we had to give any money we got back. Yeah. So you can see it happened piece by piece. We used black locust for the frames, and sometimes we would just go on scouting missions, driving around the neighborhood to see who had big trees in their yards. We'd knock on the door. They're considered an invasive species up there, and say, do you really want that one? We can help if you don't. We used black locust because it's incredibly rot resistant. They use it for fence posts. You can put it in the ground, in wet ground, and nothing happens. So that's great for a boat, and it's incredibly curvy. So for the frames of the boat, you could find a piece that fit what you needed. And each one really is a sculpture unto itself. You guys probably all know that. I mean, each one curves and spirals in a different and unique way.
Questions about the frame replacement?
Yeah.
How many would you guys knock out before you started replacing? Do you have any?
It was really one by one.
Right.
Yeah. As you can see. And then, so as the project went on, it was all dark wood, and then you had 2 frames, and then 4 and 6, and then finally the whole thing brightened up again. We used Purple Heart for the backbone. We used the original iron shoe, so we took that off and refinished it. Josh had already put new keel bolts in the boat, so those came out and then went back in again. Have any of you worked with Purple Heart before? It's terrible. It's wonderful, but it's terrible. Your blade will just start smoking. If you try to drill into it, the drill will break off. It's very hard. But we chose, if we were going to do this project, we wanted to know that the boat was going to last another 100 years and do it the best possible way we could. So yeah, the barn that we built eventually got a roof and wrapped in plastic. You can see, I think this is there we go. Over there is a whole bunch of Douglas fir that came from one dead standing tree out on the property in Oregon where Josh's dad, Bill, built the sloop. So we had that shipped across the country, milled and shipped across the country. And that saved us a lot of money to have that wood available. It became all the central planks and the ceiling boards of the boat.
Like Purple Heart saw it instead.
Yeah, exactly. It was purple rain every day. Again, Simon there, a little further on in the project. This was kind of his design loft up in here, a teak transom with the hailing port carved into it, which was again a commitment to Provincetown that we weren't going to leave with the boat. Some shipwrights at work. It was really interesting for me. We're 2 years out from this restoration now, and just going through the photos to put this presentation together made me exhausted. just looking at it all again. Oh my goodness. The laminated mahogany is what we used for the cross beams here. Originally was white oak, but there's really not any left up there. Or white pine. I think white pine up there, but there's none left. The shipping industry in Maine, they took down all the forests, logged everything. It's crazy to see pictures. The town that we ended up in for the restoration, we just it kind of happened that we ended up where we were, and then found out that that town is called the town that went to sea because it was the biggest shipbuilding town of any in Maine, Thomaston. Yeah.
What kind of wood was the replacement planking?
Douglas fir.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but we also used down towards the keel, we used harder woods. Up towards the top, we also used harder woods. So these are hackmatack knees. Those come from swamps, and you want to get the windward root so that all the grains are as strong as they can possibly be in a curve. It's their tap root that they put down to hold themselves. Yeah. This is a design for the new cockpit and cabin house that our friend Eli designed. We changed the ballast a bit to get some of the ballast lower. So we built these little pyramids molds that we put into cement and then poured lead into from some of those bricks that I was talking about. And again, having that weight lower allows you to have more stability and greater carrying capacity for passengers. This is one of those late nights with lead going into the mold there. Like a science experiment. Crack. Caulking and bunging. Nobody believed that we would have it done by June 15th of 2024. And in some ways, they were right. Yeah, there were so many people that were involved. I mean, it is a community building object at every stage, a wooden boat, as I'm sure you know, because here you all are. Yeah, people came in from all over the place to help out. We had a lot of local volunteers. So for the launching, it just so happened that our primer was gray. And so we put those battleship numbers from World War II on the side of the boat. And we had a huge launch party June 15th. This is Susan Avalar and Mary Jo Avalar, and they are the relatives of Al Avalar and Justin Avalar, who owned the boat for the longest and brought it to Provincetown. And they brought back the original bell, which they had taken to put back on the boat that day. Towards the end, it was a lot of glue towards the end, and our shipwrights hated it. They really liked the section where they got to use the 1800s bandsaw and make big wooden pieces, not the part where they had to get the glue out. So when we launched the boat, I got to drive it out of the barn and down the road. It was like a quarter mile down to the water. We had to pull the power cords up as we went, but it was quite a spectacle. There's the launch party. Josh down below looking at the water coming in, which is naturally what happens when you launch a wooden boat that's been dry. And then for the final, so we did a stability test when we had the boat in the water that first time, and that with the masts in and everything. And then we pulled it out again and brought it to Lyman Morse, which is the yard that hauled us in the first place. And this was such an incredible change for us to be in a professional setting. And you can see this is a vacuum system. To be in a dry building, whoa, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so our deck project got the benefit of being in that building with this vacuum project. So this is a layer of foam, which is both insulating and stability providing, and then a layer of glass. And you can see all the epoxy bubbling up because of the vacuum system there. Pretty magical stuff. And then a layer of all grip, and it is designed, like the amount of tape, I think it's probably wrapped around the world several times, the amount of tape that we used. It's designed so that it can have a laid teak deck eventually. Everything has a little 3/4 inch giveaway, but we certainly did not have the money or the interest in continuing that at that time. We got to wear all these funny little suits like E.T. To do those projects at Lyman Morse. We used some of their carpenters and team to help. So this is all that Douglas fir that came from the property out in Oregon. And all of this just took forever. This is a guy, Steve, who came to do the little filigree on the bow. And he had sailed with Captain John Bennett, who was another Provincetown captain, and fell in love with the boat with him when they ran aground in the Boston Harbor. Yeah. We kept all the wiring, so we just had a wiring harness that we pulled out of the boat and were able to just plop it all back in because that had been restored or replaced not too long ago. Before this restoration, if you went on an offshore trip with the Hindu, you were responsible for stapling plastic above your bunk because it would rain in and it would inevitably fall down on top of you. And some of that was seawater, so any electronics, was not a good situation. Getting the gold on there, seizing. Reminds me of Game of Thrones. These were all the stations for the cockpit combing, which was 7 layers put together. Again, all the final parts of the boat seemed like they took forever. Purple Heart cap rail that we steamed to bend it, but really doesn't bend particularly well. So it was putting it in the steamer, getting a team of 6 people and running it upstairs, and then clamping it down. Finally starting to come together. And then finally having its moment to exit its second barn. And we let Bill, Josh's dad, do the champagne this time.
With the proper wreath.
Yeah. So it was December. So we did the first launch June 15th. And then the next time it was December 20th. So all of those months in between were spent on all the finishing touches of the boat, which seemed to take the longest. This was our frozen team that final night before it went off. So December 20th, it left Maine. There was sea smoke and misery. Christmas on board. And it finally arrived in Key West, stopped in Annapolis, and then arrived in Key West January 13th for its first season back. We had a big 100th party for the Schooner Hindu, which turned 100 in 2025. Since then, the boat is in the Pilgrim Monument and Museum in Provincetown. A little exhibit about the restoration and its ties to Provincetown. We started this nonprofit, Sail As You Are. We had a logo competition, and this was the winner. We started celebrating the history of the Hindu with some yearly events, a Great Gatsby sale, a Hooligan Navy sale, and a Spice Trade sale. These will be annual if you guys want to come. We have a red carpet welcome event that happens every year for the Hindu. And I have the honor of working with an all-female crew and getting the next generation of female captains trained up. Hooligan Navy SEAL, clearly. Great Gatsby. And a junior crew, and these two are going to be the next captains. So yeah, I think we made it through 101 slides, or 100.